So we didn't get a chance to talk to you at all about P.K. Subban's contract last week because Frank got onto his tangents and other topics. So I want to get your opinion, and we'll get Carlin's opinion here. 8 years, $72 million for P.K. Subban. What did you think of when you heard that deal, Phil?
Well, at $9 million a year, I went, wow. That's all I could say is wow. Salaries are getting higher and higher and higher, and I don't know whether the guy right now is worth it. Is it going to be worth it? Would another team give it to him? Probably. So I guess he's worth it. And I wish him all the best. I'm jealous. I was playing.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. Well, you mentioned being jealous, and before we get Carlin in here, how do you think this plays in the locker room with the other guys? I mean, Carey Price is at $5 million for a couple more years, and he's kind of the lead dog there. Yet here's P.K. Subban, his friend, making on average $4 million more a season for the next little while. How does this play in the locker room of the Montreal Canadiens?
I don't think, at least it never used to play in the locker room. Times have changed. I don't know. I don't think it will. As long as the guy's playing well and doing his job the way he's supposed to do it, there'll be no bitching or moaning or anything else about the money that he's getting. And most guys, a guy like Carey Price or somebody else would say, okay, my turn's coming. And that's the only way it affects. Because you'll get another defenseman who, you know, is a young guy coming up and playing well, and all of a sudden after his first 3 years, say, or 4 years, he'll say, well, if P.K. Subban got $9 million, don't you think I should get 6 or 7? And that's what his agent will do.
Yeah.
For sure. And therein lies the problem. When you pay these guys this amount of money, it just trickles all the way down. And everybody, you know, wants to get a piece of the action. I remember one time a guy coming into me and he's saying to me, you know, I should get so-and-so amount. He says, I'm half as good as Brian Leach, and you're giving him $300,000 a year. Imagine that. That's what we paid him then. And I should get $150,000. I said, half as good? Yeah, you're just like him with 2 arms, 2 legs, and 2 hands, and that's about it.
It sounds like you had your own little arbitration hearing in your office that day with that player. Do you, and again, Carlin, I'll get to you, I promise. Sure. But Phil, do you like the idea of salaries being public? Because I guess it gives the players, like you were saying, a sense of what so-and-so is worth than what I'm worth. Do you think it's good that other players know what their fellow players are making?
I was one of these guys that did not believe, even when I was president of the Player Association, I did not like the fact what other guys were making should be public. I just didn't like it. I didn't think, but if the agents did this. The agents did this, and the media did this because they could get more money from teams because of arbitration and everything else. And don't think this doesn't affect the arbitration rights of guys. You know? Mm-hmm. Hey, good for them. As far as the players are concerned, they don't care. I mean, but if I were them, I would be worried about that. I really would. But most of these guys don't even care. It's the agents that care. And it's the agents that get them the much money. That's why you hire it. And let's not, what does an agent get, 5%?
Yeah, I think that's the average, 5%. The phone's ringing, bud. Just let you know. Yeah, about 5%.
Oh, Donnie Meehan, on this one alone, $2 million, 5%.
Yeah, you're right. Donnie Meehan made out pretty nicely this weekend, that's for sure. You're right.
Well, I told Donnie Meehan, I says, and you have become my second richest friend till Louis Nanny.
Yeah, Don Meehan has turned into a pretty good life. In fact, I had a friend of mine who's involved in the NHL, Phil, say to me, you know, Tony, Donnie Meehan runs this league. And he was saying it half in jest, but I think there's some seriousness to it because he's got a lot of the big money guys, and he kind of sets the bar for what some of the stars are making. Him and Pat Brisson. Brisson's got Taves. No, sorry, he's got Patrick Kane and Sidney Crosby. So,
and you know what? And that's fine. I mean, when it all this first started, Eagleson ran.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's face it.
That's well said, Phil. You're right.
So, I don't think he runs the league per se. Donnie Meehan is doing the job. And by the way, Donnie is a good negotiator, a very good negotiator, but he's also, I think, in a sense, fair.
Mm-hmm.
But this instance, I think he overreached. And from what I heard, this was not a Marc Bergevin deal.
Well, I was just about to ask you that because I think Carlin wanted to talk about that. It looks like Jeff Molson, the owner of the Canadiens, stepped in and said, sign this guy, sign him now.
Yeah, it definitely appeared that way. I mean, after the arbitration hearing, things looked noticeably frosty between Subban and Marc Bergevin. P.K. Subban looked like he'd been hit by a truck. It just, he had a look of wide-eyed bewilderment. And Marc Bergevin, he was very tight-lipped. He apparently, wasn't pleased about how it played out either. And from what I heard, Bergevin wanted to give him just a 1-year bridge deal and then do this whole thing again. But ownership kind of turned the screws a bit and said, no, this is our guy. We got to get this done, whatever it takes. It's just like the old story about how the Canadiens used to negotiate with Jean Beliveau. They would just open up the vault door and say, Jean, take what you think is fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? And Beliveau probably said, well, in those days, 50,000 is fair.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I mean, but nowadays, if a guy did that to a player, but see, Beliveau didn't have an agent. We didn't have agents back then.
When did you get your first agent, Phil?
My first agent was Eagleson, my first year in Boston, and then I did it because I thought it would be a good thing with Bobby and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And it was terrible. It was a bad mistake, and I never had an agent after that. I did it myself. I had an attorney who would read the contract and put the right verbiage in and everything else, but I negotiated my own deals.
Why did you feel having an agent was a mistake, Phil?
Because I gave him 5% of something that I thought I deserved anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I never was afraid to ask for the right amount of money after my initial contract, okay, guys? I'll never forget this. I went in with Tommy Ivan. Tommy Ivan was sitting behind his desk, and I heard him yelling on the phone, "You tell that son of a bitch, I got 100 guys like him. I'm not going to pay him that amount of money. I'm not going to do that." And then I go in. And as I'm sitting there, he said, "Well, son," and he takes off his glasses on the bridge of his nose, and he said, "Well, son, what do you think? How much would you like?" I was just about to say something, the phone rang. And he picked it up, and he went, "What? Too much. I'm not giving that son of a bitch that. No way. Screw off. I got a lot of guys like him." He hung up the phone, and he looked at me, and he said, "Now, what would you like?"
So what'd you ask for, Phil?
Yeah, did you revise your number after that?
I certainly did.
But see, the other part of it, maybe Tommy Ivan felt you were above and beyond the other guys that were calling, and if you had asked for a ridiculous amount of money, he might have given it to you.
No, I got to tell you, I asked him this years and years later.
Okay.
I was managing. He had a little button underneath his desk, and because there was no agents back then, and he would press the button just as when the kid was going to ask what he wanted, money, and the phone, and he'd say, "What? No, I'm not giving them that much money."
Oh.
The shit out of you.
That was, well, it worked, I guess.
That's Mr. Burns-esque from The
It
Simpsons
worked.
there.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.